Do you know what it feels like to work 14 hours a day? What about being forced to work an 8-hour shift without even a sip of water, without even being able to use the restroom? This story tells a real incident that happened at one of the largest sandwich chains in the United States and turned a young man's life upside down. If you have experienced something similar, send your story to the email address in the description and let us tell your story in our next video.
My name is Marcus, and I'm going to tell you about what happened to me in July of 2023 in Atlanta, Georgia. I was 25 years old at that time, and my life was literally a rush. I would wake up at 6 in the morning, start work at a construction company at 7, and my shift there would end at 3 in the afternoon. Then I would drive 20 minutes to the Suburban branch in the Midtown area, and work there from 4 in the evening until midnight. You are wondering why I worked so much, right? My father had a heart attack 2 years ago and could no longer work heavy jobs. My mother worked as a cleaner in a small nursing home. I also had a 17-year-old sister who had just started university. I was the oldest child in the family, and I had the responsibility of providing for all of us on my shoulders. My job at the construction site was my main income, but it was not enough. My part-time job at Suburban meant extra money for bills, my sister's school expenses, and my father's medications. It had been 3 months since I started working at Suburban. During the interview, I met Denise, who was in the assistant manager position. Denise was in her early 30s, red-haired, frowning, always wearing a tense expression, medium-height woman. There was a constant look of displeasure on her face, and her eyes scanned the surroundings, as if expecting to catch someone red-handed at any moment. When she spoke, the tone of her voice always carried a sharp and commanding attitude. From the first day, I realized that working with her would not be easy, but I needed the money. In the first weeks, everything was relatively normal. During the evening shift, usually more people would work with me. One of them was Jamal, a man in his 40s, tall, broad-shouldered, dark-skinned. His hair had started to thin slightly from his head, and he always looked tired. The deep lines on his face showed that life had burdened him too much. But Jamal was a good-hearted person. He would do his work quietly and had taught me many things in the first days. He had patiently explained the organization of the sandwich-making station, how to check material stocks, how to close the register, everything. My other co-worker was Jessica. She was 22 years old, medium height, brown-haired, a cheerful girl with a freckled face. The green eyes behind her glasses always seemed to be smiling. Jessica was studying nursing at university, and just like me, she was working to cover her school expenses. When our shifts overlapped, I was happy to work with her because she would brighten the atmosphere. It was the second week of July. That day, when I left the construction site, my body was in pieces. We had been carrying heavy cement bags since morning, and my back, arms, and legs were burning. The sun was especially merciless that day, and we were soaked in sweat in Atlanta's oppressive, humid heat. When I got in my car, I had lime dust, sweat, and fatigue on me. On my way to Suburban, only one thing was going through my mind: finding a 15-minute break before my shift started to eat something. When I arrived at the store, it was exactly 16 o'clock. I entered through the back door and immediately saw Denise. She looked especially tense that day. Her face was more sour than usual, and she was typing something on her phone. When she saw me, she raised her head and called out to me in a harsh voice. Denise told me I needed to put on my uniform immediately and start working. I told her I was very tired today. I had just come from the construction site and I had not eaten anything yet. I said I could grab something to eat for about 10 minutes and come back. But Denise frowned and told me that Jessica would not be coming today. She had reported that she was sick. It would just be me and Jamal, and the evening rush was about to start. She told me I needed to get ready immediately, that I could take my break later. I said okay and went to the changing room. I put on the green Suburban uniform, washed my hands, and went behind the sandwich-making station. Jamal was on the kitchen side, taking bread out of the oven. He nodded to greet me, and I could tell from his face that he was tired like me. The first rush of customers started before 17 o'clock. People coming from work were coming for dinner. I would finish one sandwich and send it to the register. Then another one would come. If you have worked at Sbrode, you know, customers can sometimes be very picky. They tell you in detail which part of the bread they want cut from, exactly how the vegetables should be placed, the amount of sauces, everything, and you have to approach each customer with a smile, patiently. When it was 18 o'clock, my stomach started to rumble so much that even the customer next to me heard it. Since morning, all I had was a sandwich I ate during lunch break at the construction site. That was at noon 12. It had been exactly 6 hours since I had eaten anything. My mouth was completely dry and my head was starting to spin. I went to Denise and asked her if I could go to the back room for 5 minutes and eat the granola bar in my bag. Denise was at the register at that moment and she looked at me as if I had said something very ridiculous. She told me to look at what I was seeing, that the customer queue never ended, that this was not break time. She added that I could do it later when the rush died down. I said okay and returned to my place. But a voice inside me was whispering that I would never get to take this break. It became 19 o'clock. Dinner time continued. My feet had started to hurt because I had been standing since morning. It was a day spent standing at the construction site too. Now I had to stand here for hours. The back of my knees was aching. There was a sharp pain in my lower back. At one point I got so dizzy that my hand trembled while making a sandwich and I almost dropped the ketchup bottle. When it was 20 o'clock, I could not take it anymore. I went to Denise again. This time I told her I really felt bad. I needed to eat something and I also needed to use the restroom. Denise looked at me angrily and told me I could not do it right now, that I could do it when the shift slowed down a bit. But I reminded her that I legally had the right to a break during an 8-hour shift. At that moment, Denise's face completely changed. Her eyes narrowed and she took a step towards me. Her voice was low, but very harsh. She said that if I wanted to use my break right, this was very bad timing. That behaving like this on a day when Jessica was not there did not fit teamwork. Then she added, if this attitude of mine continued, she would take this into account when making next week's schedule, implying that she might give fewer shifts. At that moment, I trembled inside. Fewer shifts meant less money, my father's medications, house rent, my sister's school expenses came to my mind. I needed this job. I said okay and returned to my place. My mouth was so dry that my tongue felt stuck to my palate. The front of my eyes started to blur slightly. It became 21 o'clock. Jamal came out of the kitchen and came to me and asked me if I was okay. He said my face had turned pale. I told him I was just tired. Jamal nodded and said Denise should give me a break, that this was a legal right. But I told him I needed it, that I could not take risks. Jamal nodded understandingly. I think he had experienced similar things. When it was 22 o'clock, the number of customers finally started to decrease. But by that point it was too late. My body was on autopilot. My hands were making sandwiches, but I felt as if I was outside my body. My head was throbbing. My stomach was cramping and I felt my knees were about to buckle. At 23 o'clock, the last customer left. Denise told me and Jamal to do the closing procedures and went to the office. Jamal immediately turned to me and told me to go to the back room and eat something. But I had no appetite left. I just wanted to sit down. I went to the back room and collapsed on the chair. My hand was shaking. I took out my water bottle from my bag and drank almost all of it in one gulp. I cannot describe the relief I felt as that water went down my throat. I sat like that for about 10 minutes. Then I got up and returned to help with the cleaning work. When it was midnight, the shift ended. As I changed my clothes and went outside, Denise told me I could look at next week's schedule, that I had 3 shifts. I would normally have 5 shifts. Something inside me wanted to say something, but I could not. I just nodded and left. When I got in my car, it was 10 past midnight. I leaned back on the steering wheel and closed my eyes. I had woken up at 6 that morning and now it was midnight. It had been exactly 18 hours that I was awake. and 14 hours of that had been spent working. 8 hours without a single break, without drinking water, without going to the restroom. When I got home, everyone was asleep. I quietly went inside, took a shower, and lay down on the bed. But I could not sleep. Denise's words kept coming to my mind. If this attitude of yours continues, as if asking for a break was a crime, as if demanding my legal right was something wrong. The next day I did research on the internet. According to Georgia state laws, every worker who worked more than 6 hours had the right to a 30-minute lunch break. Also, the employer could not prevent going to the restroom. These were legal rights. But the reality was this: when you demanded these rights, you could face hidden punishments such as shift cuts, being assigned to bad hours, or even being fired. The following week I only worked 3 shifts, and each time I felt Denise's cold stares. But the really shocking thing was something that happened that made me realize I was not in the same situation. On Wednesday evening of that week during the shift, a new employee started work. His name was Tyler. He was about 19 years old, blonde-haired, athletic build. A kid who was constantly smiling. Denise showed him such behavior that I could not believe my eyes. Just 2 hours after Tyler started work, Denise told him on her own initiative to take a break, that he could rest in the back room. Tyler comfortably took a 15-minute break, played with his phone, ate something, and came back. At that time, I had been standing for 4 hours and no one had offered me a break. Jamal noticed this and tried to tell me something with his looks when the shift ended. Jamal talked to me in the back room. He told me that Denise favored some employees, that she especially treated young, handsome male employees differently. This situation had happened with someone else months ago, and that person had eventually resigned. That night on the drive home, I thought a lot inside the car. This was not just about break rights. This was about systematically making some employees feel worthless, punishing them when they demanded their rights, and favorites getting the best of everything. The next day, I went to the Georgia State Labor Rights Department website and found a complaint form. In the form, I wrote in detail everything I experienced: not being given break rights, being prevented from going to the restroom, shift reduction threats, favoritism. After I sent the form, there was a strange feeling inside me. On one hand, I was scared. On the other hand, I was relieved that I had finally done something. 2 weeks later, Subroad's district manager came to the store. He was a tall man in a suit with a serious facial expression. Denise looked very tense that day. The district manager met with me and Jamal separately. He asked us questions, listened to what we experienced, took notes. Jamal also confessed that he had experienced similar things, but was afraid to complain. At the end of the 4th week, I found another job under better conditions. I gave my 2-week notice to Subroad. Denise just said okay and did not say anything else. But the day before I left, Jamal told me that Denise had received a written warning from the district manager that if another complaint came, she would be terminated. This was a small victory for me.
Marcus's story unfortunately reflects the reality experienced by millions of people working in the fast food industry in the United States. Legal rights exist on paper, but in practice, using these rights can be prevented by the fear of shift cuts or worse, being fired. If you have experienced something similar, know that you are not alone. Share your story with us and let us shed light on these issues together.